I myself am a scientist. I spent about 15 years at the bench doing research. But last year, my wife and I were fortunate enough to have our first child. Though the pregnancy went okay, unfortunately, our daughter was born very sick and spent a long time in the hospital. One of the hardest parts about that experience was that the diseases that she had were somewhat common, the biology well understood, but there were no dedicated therapeutic options available to her. And as a consequence, she spent a long time suffering. You know, when she was in the NICU, one of the things that we observed as we spent time with other families who also had sick children is that we all shared something in common. We all felt tremendous hope that there would be a potential treatment for our child and for the diseases that they had. However, in many cases, we also observed that there was a lack of capital and funding to be able to get those promising treatments into a clinical trial. It was that experience and the community and the families that we spent time with that made me realize that the challenge in rare disease drug development is not finding a potential treatment, but funding it. And so from that experience, I decided to start Vibe Bio with my co-founder, Josh Foreman. Vibe Bio is building a community of patients, scientists, and partners that help us identify and vet treatments, initially focused on the rare disease space. We then fund the actual drug development work using cryptocurrency token sales, and do so such that we can put patients truly at the center of the drug development process, as opposed to profit or politics. And so we've launched a few months ago. We've announced a $12 million round of financing and several partnerships with amazing patient advocacy groups like Chelsea's Hope, which is focused on Lafora disease, to be able to help provide patients with unprecedented control of the drug development process. Well, I think as we build our community of patients, scientists, and partners, we've been looking to a lot of these recent examples of patient-led medicine as inspiration for the work that we do. I think we've seen biotech venture capital firms and venture creation sort of really come into light over the past decade or so. Moderna being a great example of a company that came out of that mode of operating. And obviously, we've always had bigger pharmaceutical companies that have been developing and commercializing medicines historically. But when it comes to rare disease specifically, the opportunity I think that exists is to be able to empower patients to be at the center of the process, to be able to leverage their superpowers of truly understanding the disease, knowing which patients to be able to benefit, as well as their ability to engage with regulatory authorities that I think now can start to be instantiated in a more routine and scalable way. So I think there's always been facets of this that's manifested. And what we're trying to do now is both codify it and put technology around it to make it scalable, but also bring a completely new source of capital to the table. If you actually look at seed and Series A investments in rare disease biotechs from 2020 to 2022, the amount invested at that stage is looking to fall from about $2.2 billion a year to about $700 million. So it puts many patients and those with rare diseases in a really hard place when you start to think about the 10,000 plus rare diseases that are out there that deserve a treatment. So I think that's where Vibe is starting to come to the forefront, and we want to bring new and innovative sources of capital to serve as a new approach, an adjacent approach to developing rare disease drugs. To give you a good example, we've partnered with Chelsea's Hope, which is a patient advocacy group focused on a rare fatal neurodegenerative disease called Lafora disease. That community has been around for several decades, and in many circumstances, their disease is effectively a death sentence. Children are often diagnosed around puberty and often pass within about a handful of years of diagnosis. For that community, despite knowing about this disease and having discovered it almost a century ago, many patients have collaborated with pharmaceutical companies, academic institutions to identify a high potential candidate medicine, only to be left at the altar, whereby that program is then no longer prioritized for the organization. So what we've done is gone and partnered with Chelsea's Hope to form an organization called New Hope Therapeutics. New Hope is currently developing a large molecule biologic in order to advance a treatment for Lafora disease. It is currently in preclinical work, but the goal is to be able to advance that compound over the next 2 years to be able to get it into patients So, we see it as an opportunity by which we can partner closely with a patient advocacy group who has deep insight into the disease and how it manifests. They can help inform things like the clinical trial protocol and the specific facets of this candidate medicine. And we can then support them with both expertise and capital to be able to advance these high potential medicines to the next phase of development.